The beat is just cold. The beat is cold. What is happening? Welcome in, everybody. Oh, just trying to position my mic here. What's happening over there on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you're watching this, whether live or on the replay? How are you? Happy Monday. It's your boy, Coach Sean. I am a faith based relationship coach, and this channel and everything in between exists to be a blessing to you, to help you build healthier, happier, and whole relationships with yourself, with God, and with others. Because without the first two, relationships with others is just simply hard to do healthily. All right, while building security that lasts beyond marriage. All right. And I am so excited for today's conversation. And this is actually going to be another one of those brief ones that we have in this series. All right. And so appreciate you a ton over there on TikTok. Myra, what's up? Maria, my fault. How are you? Everyone that's joining in, whether you're watching this live, you're watching the replay on all networks and channels, it is a blessing and a privilege to be in front of you today. And if you've been a part of this journey, this is now the 10th installment, I believe. I'm trying my best not to lose track here, but this is the 10th installment of our conversation and continuous conversation on dating apps. All right. And the reason why we even decided to start this series in the first place, number one, is because a lot of clients and people that I work with in these spaces are actively dating and trying to figure out the best way to do it, the healthiest way to do it with all the craziness that's happening in relationships today. All right. So that's number one. Number two, this series is designed not to persuade you to go to dating apps. However, is to give you proper perspectives, data, analysis, all the things that you need to know in order to operate in the dating spaces healthily. Because let's face it, even though many of us may not like it, may not be a fan of it, online dating, online relationships, online communication and connection is the wave, and it's only getting more. It's only growing, right? And so instead of fighting against it, let's actually figure out a plan to use it in the best of ways. That doesn't start with us trying to change other people, doesn't start with us trying to change the apps, but starts with us dealing with ourselves in the healthiest of ways. So, regardless of what shows up in front of us, we trust ourselves to be able to make healthy decisions. We trust what we see, and we more importantly know how to move appropriately. All right. And so, if you've missed the previous series or the previous, installments of this, I encourage you to go check that out. It's over on my YouTube. All handles are the same, Coach Sean Walker. Okay, across all platforms. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on TikTok. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. All right. Turn on post bell notifications so you know when we're posting. What's up, Desi Red? Good to see you, sis. Um, I believe I can't tell by your profile. So, Desi, my fault. I don't know. But what's up? Good to see you. And so this is gonna be a fun time. All right. Fun conversation. Shout out to Dr. Elijah in the building over on TikTok. Y'all please go show my brother some love, man. He's doing amazing things. Royal Lamb is an amazing practitioner, creative studio, all the things that he's got going on over there, as well as him going live regularly. His lives are a blessing. So if you get something from me, I know you'll get something from him. 1000%. That's my man, 100 grand pots and pans. So y'all please go follow him. Also on YouTube, subscribe to his channel. You can look him up as well. Dr. Elijah Frazier, Christian practitioner, all the things. His doctoral degree as I'm sorry, I tried to throw in a quick joke there. That's not funny. That's not funny. But y'all get it. It's legit. All right. It is legit. Google is his best friend. And all the things, man. So just shout out to him and everybody else joining in. All right, Desiree, I appreciate you a ton. Man, I'm excited. All right, for this conversation, and we're gonna dive into it. And we're gonna save the end for some Q&A. All right. And so let's be sure to lock in there, and we'll get some things started. Let me clean up some space here. This is going to be a little bit of a different type of setup here. Yeah, it takes the recording. So there we go. All right. Had to free up some space, man. This computer's taking up a lot here. Okay. All right. So again, if you've missed the previous installments of this series, again, I encourage you to check those out. We covered a lot of topics and a lot of ground. Okay, we broke the beginning icebreaker with this whole entire conversation by just laying out a couple key conversations and questions centering around dating apps. Right? Are they legit? Why is everybody so piss poor in the dating space? Should Christians use dating apps? Just dealing with the religious aspect of things, and then of course, just a lot of the common objections to dating apps. Okay, so we separated this into different videos, different lives, and different sections. Okay, one of my favorite conversations we covered is actually recently. We took two sessions to cover the psychology behind dating, the psychology behind dating for men and women, and then the psychology behind the usage of dating apps. Okay, these are things that you actually want to get familiar with because it actually massively plays a role in not just you being able to be aware of when you're using dating apps, when you're on them, but also the approach and lens to which men and women view dating, not to be on the same page in which how we view the lens of dating, but however, sharing common goals and outcomes of what is looked after, what is wanted in the dating scene. Okay. Women filtering dating through safety, men filtering dating through various things that they feel they need to be able to do, to accomplish, to succeed at, to be valid. Okay. We talked about this from a various different lens in regards to the main question that is asked at the soul of every individual, starting when they're young, men and women asking different questions, but pointing to various needs. Men asking, how am I worthy and how will I prove it? Women asking, am I lovable and who will love me? Okay, so if you want to go back into that breakdown, check it out. We also talk about the discernment. Okay, what is discernment? How do we use discernment? Such a key, repetitive word that you hear floating around social media. And yet a lot of people still feel it's like not only super, super spiritual, but it's hard to do. And yet it's something that we literally put into practical formality for you to use even in the direction of dating. Okay. And so this is something that is really, really clutch. All right. And it's going to be something that's being very beneficial. All right. So, of course, go back and check all those out. And that sets the stage for what our conversation is today because our last installment we left off on just talking about the dating profile in and of itself, right? What makes a healthy profile? What makes a interesting profile? Okay, and some things that you want to include in regards to inviting engagement. Okay, the overarching theme of that. Okay, we're just transitioning now into the practicality of the usage of the app. All right, you're talking to somebody who has once used dating apps, who is currently using dating apps. Okay. And again, this is not to put you in position to use them as well. People have various experiences. I respect them all. I know people who are healed and doing things in a healthy way who are like, yo, dating apps are not the move. And there's some also perspectives, right? On both sides that can be heard to give you a fair opportunity to make a decision instead of you coming to TikTok, social media, and all the other places and hearing people say the craziest things, being very loud, being very boisterous, and yet not only inaccurate, okay, but are also speaking to you from so many lenses of pains and traumas they've experienced and somehow interpreting that to you. Okay, so this is one of the things we have to be very, very mindful and careful of, just the heart posture and approach that many people carry regarding these kind of conversations because it easily can become something where someone is trying to, not even intentionally, but through their language, through their heart posture, and through their approach, are trying to instill in you various levels of fear to keep you from engaging in something that actually could make sense for you, even though this person had a rough experience with one person that they're now attributing to the entirety of the population of these type of people. Okay, all men are trash, all women are trash. You've heard enough of it. Okay, this is not a men versus women gender war. We're not getting into none of that. All of that is trash. All of that is crap. We need each other. This is something designed to put us into position to maximize these things in the healthiest of ways. Okay, shout out to Desi Raid in the chat. She says, I like meeting people face to face and on video calls too. I just like to see the body language. I love it, right? And that's actually going into our conversation today because now we're actually addressing one of the next steps, right? Which is actually just kind of understanding why matches, okay, on dating apps themselves don't turn into dates. Okay, if you've been on dating apps at any point for a long, lengthy of time, whether you're, again, men or women, regardless, all right. If you've been on there long enough, you probably had some matches, okay, to some extent, very few or many, okay. And you realize how even though there's been many matches, people agree, people like, and people like what they see and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't always turn into a date, right? It doesn't always turn into something more that actually makes progress, that actually makes it possible to move forward. Why is that? Well, this is the conversation that we step into today. All right. So as always, get your notepads, your journals. All right. If you desire to take notes in some kind of capacity, this is going to be another one of those that you're going to want to do that. All right. And this is going to be one of those in and outs, and then we'll come back around for Q&A. All right. Sound good? Appreciate y'all journeying with me. Uh, uh, Maria, I hope I'm saying your name right. Maria. That's just how I'm. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, please let me know. She says I've never been on dating apps. I feel it. There's a lot of people that have never been on dating apps. And I hope that this conversation is something, again, not to necessarily persuade you, like, oh, the only way you're going to be able to find somebody is if you use dating apps from this conversation. But I do want to open it up because, one, a lot of people have their opinions on it, but aren't necessarily talking about it and unpacking it step by step, processing, what the journey looks like. And this is designed to be a safe space where we can do that together. Okay. We're just opening up the conversation. We're making it safe because there's a lot of opinions out there on it. And hopefully so far in this journey, I've presented you with something to consider that again just opens up your mind with curiosity on, hey, maybe I can give it a try. Okay, maybe I'm not as desperate as people have made me out to look by me getting on dating apps, right? And actually learning to make certain decisions for yourself, trusting your ability to make those decisions through the journey. Okay. And so there's a lot of people who fit that same bill. They haven't been in the dating apps, they haven't been in the dating pool, they've never been on a date, they've never been in a relationship, or vice versa. They've been in all those directions and still haven't found something that is beneficial for them. And this is supposed to be a space where we can just navigate those things safely together. All right. And so stick around. If this is your first live, if this is the first time of you being a part of this conversation, again, I just encourage all you guys to go back, listen to the previous ones. I think there'll be eye openers for certain, especially when it comes to the statistics. Like people don't like it. But again, when you start bringing numbers into conversations, it can easily shift some of it. Of course, not all of it is represented. Not everybody is represented. But some of the research that I've done personally, I think it's very interesting that, again, people who may say a lot towards dating apps, you know, this kind of stuff is left out. All right. And one of them is actually mentioning the success rate of, marriages or relationships that started on dating apps. Again, it is relatively low, but however, those numbers are increasing. Okay. So like last check I did, I believe it reads 12% of relationships that began on a dating app or online of some sort ended in marriage. Okay, and 23% or more, I believe, is the statistic that we read and uncovered that led to long term relationships. And so it's just like sometimes we just need to know that there's a possibility, even though it may feel like it's a slim possibility. Sometimes we just need to know that there's a possibility because right now there's a lot of people who are just hopeless in these spaces. There's just a lot of people who are hopeless when it comes to dating and relationships. And to what extent I can understand at the same time, as I've made my, arguments before, the struggling in dating is less about the dating pool itself. It's about the beliefs. And I think this is going to be another part of that conversation where we unlock that together. All right. So, why don't matches turn into dates? All right. This is the conversation that we're looking at today. And of course, people love to obsess over matches. All right. If you've been on dating apps, you've been around friends who are on dating apps, look who I matched with. How many matches do you have? How many messages do you have? How many likes, this and like that? We kind of talked about this in the previous conversation where it definitely steps into the struggle of comparison and that the game is not to have the most matches. Like, I hate to break the news to you, but getting on a dating app and having an abundance of matches or taking your time out of your day to just go through the line and just swiping right on every profile you see, you don't look at any kind of details. You don't look at any kind of bios, descriptions, tags, filters. You just go on there and swipe right, 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 right. One, you're part of the problem. Okay. And two, the game is not to have the most matches, right? Because not every match is a reflection of quality. Not every match is actually something that is destined to go somewhere. Okay. Not every match is valid. right? Just like not every job you apply for is valid, just like not every gym that you go to is valid. Okay, just like not every purchase you make is valid. It's the same thing here. Okay, and we have to be aware of that and be honest about that if we're going to make the most of dating experiences, especially those of you who are like, yo, I'm dating and I'm trying it online for the first time, going again, whatever the case is. Okay, people obsess over matches, but it's just simply not the game. And if you play it that way, well, no wonder matches don't turn into dates, progress isn't made, and you don't build genuine connections. The truth is that it's an opening. Okay. I need you to write that down somewhere. Matches are not momentum, it's just an opening. This is a beginning stage to what can be here with this person. A match is just simply an introduction to a beginning conversation that can be cultivated that goes further than what you saw on someone's profile. That's it. Okay. So for those of you who are quick to cling and turn matches into marriage, to turn matches into commitment immediately, to turn somebody who swiped right on your profile to mean that it has to go the long distance, that is an attachment issue. And as we've addressed in previous conversations, we do have to deal with that intentionally so that we can overcome this idea that every match means it has to go the distance, or that, this is a match made in heaven. God sent you here. God put me in your path. Okay. This is supposed to be a happily ever after kind of story. Okay. We're clinging to things, and that's actually what's causing more of your downfall, not less of it. Okay. And yet we turn around and we blame the dating apps and all these things, when in reality, it's you trying to force somebody or something that is out of your control to accommodate to something you have to look inwardly to heal intentionally yourself. Let's just call a spade a spade. All right. So a match is not momentum, it's only an opening. Okay. And now that we recognize that matches are just openings, well, now we get creative, right? Now we get creative and we get intentional, because now we're starting to talk about things ranging from these topics. All right. Well, one, you got to deal with the dry openers, right? So obviously these dating apps are designed. For example, you have like little slogans. Hinge is one of them. Hinge will tell you the app designed to be deleted, right? Um, I don't know exactly the rest of the slogans for the rest of the apps, but I know Hinge is one of the most popular, if not the most popular one. I believe most people are on Hinge if you're on a dating app, okay, or you're aware of it, you've been on it before. All right. So there's dry openers that you got to deal with. Okay. How do we navigate that? And how do we prevent ourselves from presenting dry openers in conversations? Okay. Then there's interview conversations, right? How quick we can be to turn this into a job interview where it's not just question after question, right? But there's no like intentional connection through the conversation. Okay, everything is a yes or no type of question asked. Okay, or for some of you, you like to dive off the deep end fast. So you like to go into the emotional depths of conversations really quickly. And then that's how we create emotional connections faster than they need to be. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The struggle of over texting, massive, right? Massive over texting. Now, there's a few different lanes that we're going to unpack there, but realize that over texting isn't necessarily only acquainted to us sending 5, 6, 7 back to back messages to somebody repetitively. Okay. Overtexting has a variety of different perspectives, and we're going to look at a few of them in this conversation and why that's important behind matches not turning into dates. Okay. Um, I appreciate you saying that, Maria. Absolutely. And you're not alone. There's a lot of people who fall into that category if they're honest with themselves, right? Attaching very easily. And here's the thing, y'all, like relationships, dating relationships in general, building some form of intimacy with people. And by intimacy, we're not just talking about sex. Okay. That's a form of intimacy. That's not the only intimacy. Okay. There's emotional intimacy. There's all these different things that just intimacy is a reflection of some form of closeness. So closeness that is pretend or that is protected or given or experienced in relationships, attachments are bound to happen, right? the question becomes, how are we going to be attached? So that's where we get the attachment styles, right? Anxious, avoidant, secure, disorganized. Okay, then you have all these different branches of avoid, attachment styles throughout all these things. But attachment is part of relationships. It's just a matter of how, right? And as we've discussed before, the healthiest relationship that anybody can ever be in is when two people are secure. Because when two secure people come together and build a relationship, this means that we connect with one another because we want one another, not because we're codependent on one another, right? Those are the healthiest relationships. That's actually what breathes the dopest connections. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that, if you're not secure and you're with someone who's secure or neither of you are secure, then that means you're in the wrong relationship. The question becomes, are we both willing and open to become secure individually that allows this relationship to become healthy and even more healthy, right? And of course, you're probably going to have more bumps in the road, but that doesn't mean it can't become something. Okay. If like statistically, most people, most of the population, especially in the dating space, fall in the category of anxious or avoidant. It's the percentage of people who are legitimately secure is low. Okay. Let's just like, it's low. And so we have to be honest about that and then put ourselves in positions to grow into becoming that gracefully, not overnight, not something that happens through more and more knowledge and intellect that we build, but giving ourselves grace and space to develop into that. And while also recognizing too that part of healing is putting ourselves around relationships that expose in us the things that we maybe aren't familiar with and growing in that. Okay. A lot of people feel like, oh, okay, so then the breaker becomes when so I'm only allowed to be in a relationship when I become secure. Honestly, y'all, like if you do that, we might be waiting forever. Now that's not to say that that isn't a bad decision or a bad idea. However, I'm someone of the mindset that the determining factor of you being in a relationship is not so much, okay, I need to hit this status, I need to hit this attachment, I need it. No, no, no. It's more so, am I ready? Okay, am I ready to deal with the journey that a relationship can take me on? Okay. And that journey can look like a variety of different things, but we want to be open and honest about that so we can build connections. Okay. Because if we start believing, okay, I'm not valid or available for a relationship until I hit this particular area of my life, and that's not just to attachment styles, that's finances, that's health, that's body image, that's all these different things. I think we're constantly putting walls in front of us because truth is, relationships are the currency of life. And there are a lot of relationships that you can experience in this life that can bring the best out of you that sometimes you would never see in your singleness and alone. Okay. And so there's some nuance to these conversations that we're probably going to talk a little bit about and hit on through not just this episode, but of course moving forward. Okay. But we're going to talk a little bit about the overtexting. The delayed responses is massive. Oh my goodness. Delayed responses, y'all. If it's not overtexting, it's delayed responses that are whooping y'all left and right. Okay, so we're going to talk about that and why that, dealing with that, and what does that really point to inwardly that we can deal with, that actually has us dealing with these relationships or these connections, these matches a little bit more healthier. All right. We're going to talk about the absence of direction. Okay. The absence of directions. What's up, Ali? Good to see you. We'll also talk about the sexual escalation. Oh my goodness, I can't tell you how many times I've come across profiles where women have felt the need to include in their bio to some degree, that don't match. If don't expect, for the moment that we match to immediately have my number. No, you're not coming over my house. No, we're not doing anything sexually. I think I've seen some crazy stuff out here. And so, how do we deal with that? Okay, without trying to, again, control other people, but know how we need to navigate around that as someone who's healed and knows what they're looking for. Okay. The fear of initiating, we're going to cover a little bit about that. We talked about that before, so we'll come back around to it. And then the final two is waiting for other people to carry the whole conversation. All right. And people wanting connection, but not knowing how to build it. All right. And so that's going to be the centerpiece of all of this. Okay. And the tension that we have to hold is realizing that matches don't equate to momentum. It doesn't necessarily mean that something is bound to happen. We're just seeing a match and we have to view the match and attach a different story to the match. And often it needs to mean that it's an opening. Okay. And the goal of messaging, okay, this is, if there's anything else that you get from this is what you really want to get. The goal of messaging, okay, especially when it comes to matching, right? Because the question is, we match, now that what do we do? Okay. The goal of messaging is not to build an entire relationship, is to determine whether real life connection makes sense. Okay. I want you to write that down, whether that's in the chat, in your notes. All right. The goal of messaging is not to build a whole relationship, is to determine whether real life connection makes sense. All right. The goal of messaging is not to build a whole relationship, it is to determine whether real life connection makes sense. All right. And so let's dive into certain levels of this. We're going to start with the dry openers. All right. And again, a lot of this is going to be pretty simple. You guys kind of get the bigger picture of a lot of this. We've done a lot of the inner perspectives and work towards this topic of throughout this whole thing. So again, a lot of this is just going to be small application windows that you're going to want to keep in mind when it comes to engaging in online dating, sending messages. Okay. And I just want you to keep in mind that this isn't limited to the common dating apps that you might think of when you think of Hinge, Tinder, BOK, Upward, Holy App, whatever type of, you know, social media dating app that's out there. Okay. This also applies to things like Instagram, TikTok. Okay. For those of you who are just like so over the top about not being on a dating app, truth is if you really want to be honest, okay, the social media handles and apps that we have access to on the regular can also be used as dating apps. That doesn't mean you are using it as dating apps, but let's not act like it can't be used. Okay, Instagram is probably one of the best dating apps out there. In fact, you probably will see people on dating apps refer to their Instagram more than anything, because guess what? You get to see more of this person, more of their personality, more of what they look like. That also encourages more of whether or not you want to what? Send a message, send a DM, slide in DMs. You can slide in DMs on TikTok. Okay. Again, doesn't stop the craziness from happening. We're just acknowledging that dating apps range across different platforms. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit of the dry openers. And here's kind of like the do's and don'ts of dry openers that I want you to keep in mind. Something that I know I have engaged in. Okay, I've put to practice, and this is something that I encourage other people to do. Okay, so number one, what makes an opener dry? Okay, well, number one is when it doesn't invite engagement. Okay, so there's a lot of different things that you can send to someone or message someone that invites engagement, and it doesn't have to be a legitimate question, right? Typically we think of, okay, well, if it's engagement, that means I'm asking a question. But listen, you can ask a question and it still be dry, right? Like if you swipe up and see somebody that you want to match with, or you want to like their profile and you want to send a message, okay? Um Saying something like, "How was your day?" Like I'm looking at that as somebody who's like, man, how would I respond if somebody who doesn't know me and saw my profile and wanted to engage with me opened up with a "How was your day?" Like that's getting an X. That's getting dismissed, right? Not because the question wasn't sincere, but because there has to be more to the creativeness than asking me how was my day, because that kind of gives off a type of I want to say a type of approach where somebody is constantly asking WYD through the duration of the day, through the duration of the conversation. Like I just didn't tell you 20 minutes ago what I was doing, and you asked again. Like the wall of text of WYD. It's pretty crazy, right? And so dry openers, these are the things that dry openers do. All right. They don't invite responses. They don't invite curiosity. Okay. Dry openers don't invite playfulness. All right. There's got to be some type of conversation that you're able to start, okay, that is based off of what you see on someone's profile, or, you know, what you're reading regarding prompts, okay? Or maybe a compliment towards their look or what you see in the picture. Get creative, all right? This is an opportunity for y'all to really be artists when it comes to engaging in openers, all right? The opener is just as strong as the close. All right. If you don't remember anything else, the opener is just as strong as the close. The opener is kind of representation of like, how do I want to do this? Like, like if you were to get on a track and run a race, right? Obviously, if you're running a 100-meter dash, 200-meter dash, hurdles, whatever the case is, like how you get off them blocks matter. The lazier you get off them blocks, the more you have to work to come back to put yourself in position to win the race. All right. But if you come off them blocks pretty smoothly and pretty fast, you got a good chance of being not just ahead of the pack, but now being able to control the pace of the race. That's where you want to be. That doesn't necessarily always mean you're first, but having a good start out the blocks gives you the best chance to have a new PR, it creates the best chance for you to be able to move forward in the race and actually recover healthily. It's the same way here. All right. The right beginnings matter. And for a lot of you, this doesn't just show in your dating life, this shows in your routine and everyday life. Because it's kind of hard for you to actually see the magnitude of an opener when you don't even open your day in the healthiest of ways. You don't even open your day in the healthiest ways, right? Your day begins no matter what time you begin waking up and getting your day going. Your day begins scrolling TikTok for 30 minutes, an hour. Your day begins looking for messiness to get involved in. Your day begins with chaos, loudness, abruptness, no order, no routine, no nothing. And so, if we really want to make the most of these things, we have to understand the magnitude of a right beginning. And the right beginning to a conversation is something that invites conversation, it's intriguing, it invites curiosity, it invites engagement. So, to avoid dry openers, right, you might want to engage with a curious, funny question. Okay. Maybe it's not even necessarily a question, it's a statement. Okay. You actually, fellas, you might be sometimes we can overthink it, right? We can add so many different things to it and we overthink the impact of an opener. It doesn't have to mean you're the funniest person ever. It doesn't mean that you have to make her be, crying on the floor laughing or vice versa. Okay. Sometimes an opener can be something as small as a dad joke. Who doesn't like a dad joke? Like, I'm just trying to make it light, right? We're not trying to open serious. We're not trying to dive into an entire philosophical conversation. We're not trying to dive into a whole spiritual explanation of the Bible and everything in it. Okay? Start light, but start something that's engaging. All right? If it's a question, if it's something that engages curiosity, if it's a compliment in terms of what you see from the photos, from the prompts, okay? Use your context clues and get creative. All right. And for a lot of you, this could be the first time you're doing this. So I don't want to put pressure on you to be perfect the first time you do it. But just realize the more reps you get into sending matches, don't just leave a like. There's too many people that are just getting on here and leaving likes. Now, I'm guilty of this. All right, because I did that before. Right. You just like a photo and keep it moving. And sometimes, right, if both of y'all are just feeling each other like that to the point where it's like, I like what I see and I like a lot of it, a like can be simple. Like, that's all you need. However, most of the time, if you want to give you the most bang for your buck, you probably want to leave a comment. You probably want to leave a response. Okay. Something that gives them an opportunity to differentiate you from other potential matches, likes that they've received. You got to be able to stand out somehow. And you just liking the photo is also considered more of a dry opener. Okay. If you've been on dating profiles long enough, you'll probably see some of them were like, don't just leave a like, say something. Right. Because they're looking for something to engage in. That doesn't mean you're going to bat 1,000. Right. There's some you're going to say it's going to miss. They're not going to see it. Okay. For whatever reason, we're not here to define that, but we are going to give ourselves the best opportunity to lead forward with a conversation. Okay. So avoid dry openers by staying curious, being engaging, all right, and keeping it light. So if it's not a dad joke, maybe it's a compliment to something that person is wearing, or maybe it's a compliment to the background and setting of the picture. Okay. There's so many prompts that these dating apps are leading you with that are giving you clues to be able to pick up on as somebody who's looking at a profile and is like, hey, I want to match or I want to like. So use the context clues. Okay. Guess where this photo was taken. Take a guess. Be comical, right? Be comical. Maybe integrate a little bit of a compliment in there. All right. Y'all use ChatGPT for everything else. I don't know why you wouldn't, like, if you're really stuck, hey, what should I say here? I don't even know what to say here. I'm like so lost for words. Okay. And then start kind of picking up on it. Obviously, there's some different settings you can put to ChatGPT where it's not just giving you the nice, easy answers, right? But again, it's just something to get you going. And we don't want to necessarily be too try hard either. So there's a balance to it, right? Because sometimes you might go to that and you're like, oh, I need to say the perfect thing. No, it's not about saying the perfect thing. It's not about saying the thing that's just going to be like that has no fault, no foul. No, let's be creative, but let's also be authentic. Something that's authentic to you, that's authentic to the way in which you would create the conversation. All right. And don't be afraid to be silly. People are taking life too seriously around us all the time. Okay. Most of the time, people are not thinking of, themselves, one, in the healthiest of light, or thinking of a situation in the healthiest of light. All right. So don't be afraid to be silly. Don't be afraid to be a little goofy. All right. To share a little bit of a laughter, to break the ice with something that's comical and that's light and that's welcoming. Okay. That shows personality, but that also shows, like, oh, okay. So, like, I can actually possibly have fun with this person. It's not something that's too deep. All right. So that's dry openers. Put one in the chat if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Should I go deeper anywhere? Let me know if y'all with me. I want to keep going. All right. Whether you're on TikTok, Instagram, all the things, put one in the chat if this makes sense. Okay. Because we'll keep going. So after the dry openers, all right, and being comical, being light, being engaging, okay, sending a comment, saying something. All right. Now we're gonna go into making sure that as the conversation flows, okay, and even as the opener takes place, let's remove ourselves from asking interview conversations. Now, granted, y'all, I know, like, yes, we need to be intentional. There's a plethora of questions that we can ask that allows us to be able to engage with this person, to see where they are, what they value, what they care for. But there's a certain place and time and stage of the conversation where those questions or that style of conversation is more welcomed. Okay. We don't need to start out the conversation with somebody we don't know, with someone we just matched that we find attractive, and we need to start asking questions. Okay. Like, when was the last relationship, and why didn't it make it? Right. Or asking questions like, um, you know, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in three? Like, if you're being honest, there's a lot of things and a lot of moments where you were like, I saw myself here in a 5 year plan, and 5 years came and went, and you were nowhere near that. And it wasn't because you failed. Like, life happened, change of directions. God had other plans. So it's like, I'm not expecting somebody that I don't know to answer that question. And even if they do, it's not something to necessarily pin down and be like, okay, this is written in stone. I can follow this. Like, nah, fam. Like, let's actually be, again, without being interviewee, without making it feel like they're on a job interview. This is a make or break. Okay. We can still open up with healthy conversation, playful conversation. But as the conversation continues, let's build on what we started with. Okay. I highly encourage you guys, as you guys look to engage in matches on profiles, look for profiles, y'all, that have something in their, prompts. Okay. Stop matching with people who have nothing in their prompts, who have no prompts, no answers, just photos. There's nothing, not to say there's nothing you can't build on. For some of you, that can be very creative, and you can be creative in that. But for those of you who maybe are beginning, I want you to look for something, like, look for profiles that have something related to prompts that they filled out. Okay. When they talk about what they like to do, what they geek out over. Okay. Something that they love, something that they hate. All right, you can definitely turn a conversation into that. Okay. There's different tags when you get on dating profiles, right? That they work out often. All right, what do they engage in? What are their beliefs? What is the religion that they're affiliated with? Maybe there's the same, maybe it's different. Okay. Obviously, we're looking for things that are in alignment with where you are value wise. But let's not necessarily turn it into a interviewing conversation immediately. Okay. There's a way to be creative, playful, and still actually engaging with each other without it making feel like, hey, you're sitting in front of me and I have a job application for you that I need you to fill out. Okay. Now, there's various ways that we'll get into this and how you can create this, but again, we're just peeling back the layers. So your opener is important. Okay, make it comical, make it light, funny, not too serious, not too forward. Okay, not too heavy, but also let's peel back from the interview conversations, question after question after question. Okay, we can have a conversation without necessarily going back to back to back to back to back questions and going so deep. All right. Now, the next two are kind of similar. We talked about it, over texting and delayed responses. All right. I just want to take a poll for a second. All right. Now, this has nothing to do with dating apps because some of you maybe have never been on dating apps, and that's cool. But when it comes to relationships and building a relationship with someone that's new, put a one in the chat if you struggled with over texting. Okay. Where you are possibly finding yourself blowing this person's phone up out of want of attention. Okay. If you haven't done that, put a two in the chat if you struggled with delayed responses. Okay. Where this person not sending a message immediately, texting you back after 2 minutes of you sending a message has you overthinking and going into a downward spiral. So put a one in the chat if you've struggled with over texting. Put a two in the chat if you've struggled with delayed responses. Okay. I just want to take a poll. For your boy, I struggled with delayed responses for a while. Delayed responses were a struggle for me. There was a lot of meaning I attributed to, you know, the delayed responses that had me feeling some type of way. Okay. So Allie's like one sometimes, two. Maria says both. Okay. Yeah. And so those are legit. Okay. Those are legit. And especially when it comes to the aspect of like dating healthily and moving through these spaces in the healthiest of ways, I want y'all to be able to look inwardly and ask yourself a massive question to both of them when it comes to overtexting and delayed responses. Okay, because these are things that definitely are reasons why matches don't turn into dates. All right. But we also have to ask ourselves this massive question. When someone isn't responding in a way or in a timely manner that we would appreciate, what do we believe that says about us or what could happen in this relationship? What is the story, right? And you may not have an answer for it now, but it's something to think about. What is the story that I'm attributing to the overtexting or delayed responses? Because even though, right, they play a role in matches not turning into dates. Okay. Sometimes there's a great possibility. Now, this is something that you have to be able to weigh out and measure through your duration of connecting with people. But sometimes we can allow a delayed response or multiple delayed responses, okay, to mean that this person, one, again, isn't interested, doesn't care, okay, or there's something off about us. Because if we were, their type of person, or if they were our type of person, we would respond faster. And truth is, y'all, there's like various different reasons why delayed responses are happening. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we still should hang around and wait for the date to come about or wait for it to fold out. Okay. I think we just take it with a grain of salt. Okay. There's something here that clearly is giving an indication that they're not as serious about this. Okay. And that's okay. It doesn't have to mean that that's wrong. It doesn't have to mean that that's negative. We just take that for what it is and we give ourselves the permission to keep looking and keep moving forward. Right. But there's a lot of reasons why people delay responses. I can't tell you how many times I've come across people and they're like, I don't even have my notifications on. Like, that's pretty crazy, right? They don't have their notifications on. Or, again, maybe they do have their notifications on. They just didn't care enough to respond. That's very possible. Okay. Most people are not going to be upfront with you and telling you why they're delaying their responses. You're just going to hear from them when you hear from them. Like, that's just the God honest truth. There's not a lot of people who are going to tell you why they're delaying their responses. Or maybe they will tell you, but it's not necessarily true because they're assuming that you have a problem with the timing in which they're sending messages, which is overthinking, which is assumption, which is the stories that we'll tell ourselves compared to the facts. Okay. I've had a lot of people be like, man, I'm so sorry. I'm so late to this response. I'm like, I'm not tripping. I'm not tripping. Trust me, I don't know you. I don't know you. There's a part of me that would like to get to know more of you. That's why I matched. That's why I like the profile. But like, I don't know you. So I don't have this expectation that you should then be responding to me so fast, so soon, and that I should be taking up your day or your time because now it's me and you. That's unfair. And if you're carrying that perspective, I'm encouraging you to challenge that and honestly let that go. Because like that's unfair. It's actually putting you more in a box than it is giving you the freedom to know how to date healthily. Every match, every conversation is now all of a sudden becoming more possessive for you instead of something that is, designed for you to engage in a process. Okay. So a lot of times matches don't turn into dates because of the overtexting and delayed responses, maybe more so because of the meanings people are attributing to those experiences. Okay. But also because there is a lack of balance. As you can notice between over texting and delayed responses, those are two extremes to the formats of engaging with someone. Shout out to Jenna in the building. Appreciate you a ton. Okay. There's extremes to both. Okay. So it's like, okay, well, if I waited too long to respond, then that would have been a problem. If I'm texting too much, then that sounds like a problem. So what's the even balance? Well, the even balance, okay, is being one in the present and two responding to what is being said, not what you wished was being said. So let me explain. If there's a message being sent and you guys are talking about sports, okay, respond to the sports message. Don't respond to additional things that she or he was never mentioning. Right? Stick with the flow of the conversation. Maybe there's a point in the conversation where the question was answered, or you got what you got out of that small tidbit of the conversation, so you're now moving on to the next thing. Raise the next question, but don't raise all so many questions at once. That's overwhelming. Right? Ask one question at a time, not multiple questions at a time. Okay. Versus the delayed responses where it's like, okay, we probably should be honest. Okay. The balance between that and that. Okay. Number two is just honesty. So it's like, if you're someone who's on these dating apps and you don't have your notifications on, I think you're going to probably run more into issues of lack of matches than you do actually taking these matches on to dates, because it's showing a lack of seriousness. We can just call it what it is. Or it's a psychological loop that you're trying to put yourself in where you're convincing yourself that you don't care, but you do care, because you probably either are somebody who literally checks the Hinge, the app, the dating app regularly. You thought turning off notifications would be less distracting, but it's actually become more distracting because you check the app way more than you would if you actually knew notifications passed in. That's a psychological approach and reframe to it. Okay. Or for some of you, it's just like, no, if you genuinely don't care that much, then you probably should just maybe, maybe it's not you, maybe it's not the season, maybe it's not the time. Maybe you should just stop convincing yourself that you're serious about dating, at least in this format. Because I think somebody who's serious about doing these things, okay, are going to make sure that they're on top of their game in every other area. Like, you don't tell yourself that you're serious about playing a sport and you don't practice and you don't set alarms to go to the gym. If you're serious about your weight loss, right, you're not shying away from your calorie tracking or, you know, the numbers that pop up from the weight scale that you just stepped on. Okay. If you're serious about, looking for a job, or you're serious about somebody taking inquiry of you from your business, why wouldn't you have your notifications on for your email, for your LinkedIn? Why wouldn't you have your notifications on so that you were aware if somebody sent you a message reaching out to you and expressing interest in your resume, in your work? So you notice how, like, we don't put that same type of expectation anywhere else, but we'll do it for dating. That kind of shows the lack of seriousness and the lack of legitimacy that we're taking this. And again, if like you're at a place where you're saying, hey, well then maybe online dating just isn't where I'm at. I mean, there's probably room where we could argue, but I won't. I just think it's more so like if you're that person that's like I don't have my notifications on, I just think you should ask yourself, okay, well, how serious are you about dating or doing online dating? How serious are you about it? Because I think if you're not serious about it, you shouldn't expect serious results. If you're going to give some timey energy, you should expect some timey results. Like that's just the God honest truth. If you're someone who's saying I'm serious about my healing or I'm serious about my weight loss, let's go back to that. But yet, like, you know, when it comes to your diet, you're you know, when it comes to the exercise, you're I'll go when I feel like it. Well, then don't expect to lose weight. Don't expect to have the body that you wanted by summer or end of summer. Don't be mad when you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, but yet you keep complaining about it and you don't decide to do anything to change it. You're playing yourself 1000%. So I think the delayed responses play a role in that. Also, of course, people just not being as serious, not being intentional about what they're looking for, what they're on there for. All right. Delayed responses sometimes, honestly, it's not always because people aren't interested. People literally are just trying to balance and integrate this new approach to dating for them, and they have a busy schedule. So they downloaded the app, they created their profiles, but man, their schedule is pretty busy. And that probably is something they should include or you should include in your bio so the people that match, okay, are at least aware that that is a possibility. So communication goes a long way. Not to say that it's expected, however, it is helpful. Okay, so not every delayed response is because someone's not interested or they're not taking it seriously. Sometimes it is because, yo, like, I legitimately do have a schedule. I got a life. I'm trying to handle some things, and I just got into the dating space trying to integrate this into my life. And I'm still trying to get the hang of things. And that's okay too, right? But the biggest question for those of you who are experiencing delayed responses or feel like you need to over text to perform, you feel like you need to constantly send messages and cling and blow their phone up because, well, if I don't, they're going to walk away. They're going to leave. They're going to find something better. They're going to find something different. They're going to find somebody more active and engaged. We do have to look inwardly and ask ourselves, why is that the story we're attaching and what else could it mean? Because on the receiving end of a delayed response or potentially feeling like I need to overtext, that is more so of you needing to deal with what's happening inwardly, less about what they need to do to make you more comfortable. So we do have to be honest about that. Okay. Because a delayed response doesn't necessarily have to be why something doesn't turn into a date. However, we do realize that, I mean, if you do take a, if you do take 5 days, 7 days to respond to a message, then, don't expect a date to come out of that. Matter of fact, somebody who's serious and looking for something intentionally will probably match with you, introduce themselves. And if there's no response within several days, they'll probably unmatch. And that's warranted. That's warranted. Okay. So we can't just act like we can just match with people and not talk. You should probably not be actively dating if you don't have time to send a message to somebody and respond to them. Or just be honest in the fact that you didn't even really, you don't like the conversation, you don't like them. So you should just probably unmatch. That's okay too. But I'd rather you do that than play yourself. Okay. So don't be too overwhelming and also don't be in that position where you're just waiting for days and eons or pretending like you're busy when you're really not, all the things. Let's be intentional, but there's ways to be intentional without being overbearing. And there's ways to be intentional about without acting like you're busy or acting like you don't have time or convincing yourself that if you act busy or all the things, then it's going to be more of an attraction. That is some foolish stuff. Foolish stuff. All right. So HK, I'm not taking calls right now. If you stick around to the end, I'll have time for some Q&A. All right. Then here's also another reason why matches don't turn into dates. No direction. Okay. What do we mean by no direction? Well, um, Number one, you just turn this into a text pal conversation. We're just sending text messages back and forth. Nobody is taking a move. Nobody is moving forward into anything. We're not taking it into text messaging or FaceTime. We're not taking it into a hey, like actually let's plan a date. Let's go somewhere. What are you interested in? And let's see what we can do to put it on this calendar and the schedule. That doesn't need to be happening immediately when you match. However, if a conversation is actively progressing, then that means we're making room for that. Okay. A lot of potential matches die in the app because there's no direction. There's no build up on conversation. Fellas, you gotta learn how to engage in conversation. The ladies aren't off the hook either. Because ladies will come in and ask you to answer all these demanding questions, and yet when you ask them, they have no idea. That's a problem. That is a legitimate problem. Don't demand that man to ask you what is this for? What are you here for? Where is this going? What are your plans here? And then when he asks you the same, you don't know. Or you're just here for vibes. You're just here for a good time. You're just no. Dealing with somebody who's healed, you will lose out. 1000%. Dealing with somebody who's healed, who is being intentional, who is focused, you're going to lose out. So you can't ask somebody to ask and answer a question or answer something that you are unwilling to know the answer for yourself. Okay? So no direction in conversation, but also no direction in next steps. Okay? The purpose of being on a dating app is to not stay in the dating app forever. At some point, we want to transition. Let's not, and again, I think I mentioned this previously. If you're having consistent conversation with somebody, I definitely don't think you should wait 5 days to come out of the app. Like, I think there's some time you should spend in the app. Don't just immediately jump into the exchange of numbers. Now, that's not to say you can't. There's some people who have moved that way and it's worked out for them. And I think that's cool. I just think you got to know your capacity and what you're ready for. All right. But be intentional with that. Okay. Be intentional with that. Like, I don't think, excuse me, y'all, I'm getting like sick or been sick at least. So, like, you don't want to get into a place where you feel like the exchange of numbers means this is permanent. Okay. Like, you can absolutely, you can absolutely exchange numbers and then learn throughout that conversation, I'm not interested anymore, and change your mind. That is completely okay. Getting and giving your number is not a solicited sentence to like, oh, this is now something I'm committing to fully. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to give your number out to everybody, but I'm also saying don't feel deathly afraid to give your number to someone that you are consistently engaging in conversation in, and you're interested in learning more. Okay, like that is something that you can be honest about. All right, but there's again, that's a sign of direction. If we're talking about next steps and next date, that's sign of direction. What is the next step? What is this going to look like? Okay. So a lot of times matches don't turn into dates because there's lack of direction. I just match with you. I'll share a few messages with you. Okay. Conversation dies down or it's not building on top of one thing or another. Okay. There's not a continual mutual interest. This person is just asking questions. You're just asking questions about this person and they're not asking questions about you. That's a easy way for that to die down and it doesn't turn into a date. Why would I continue to consider taking you out somewhere or meeting you somewhere when even over the phone we don't even have conversation that's actually mutual? We're caring about mutual interests, we're caring about all those things. Like that's a waste of time. All right. So fellas, it's important. Lead with direction. If this is somebody that you intentionally wanted to swipe right on, you knew what you were doing, you knew what you saw, and you did not mind this person matching back with you to engage further in the conversation, it is important that you want to lead with some direction. Hey, yeah, I'm interested. I want to figure out this. I want to figure out that. Okay. They actually do have some prompts now on more recent dating apps specifically where they'll actually tell you choose a time and choose a place. And the person or user's account has a different selection of places that you can choose to pick based on their preference for a time and a first date. That's a great starter point. Now again, that's not to say you need to immediately go on the date with them, but it does open up the conversation specifically on Hinge. They match, they're like, "Oh my goodness, awesome. What time?" Now we start the conversation. Okay? I personally like FaceTime dates. Okay? Spend some time in the app, have some conversation. You appreciate the conversation where it's going, the numbers exchange. Let's get on FaceTime. Let that be the first date. Okay, let that be the introduction date. Um, Now, if you don't have an iPhone, you can also do Google Meet, Zoom, get creative. Okay, but the first introduction or encounter with each other doesn't necessarily have to always be in person, and especially because women play it safe, which they should. I actually highly encourage that FaceTime is a part of your process. Okay, but there's got to be some level of direction. Next steps. Where is this going? Let's not just keep it here to talking about this one thing, and that's what we drag the conversation on. Build on conversation, build on connection, then we're getting it going somewhere. Okay, we're not a fan of stagnation. Is this making sense so far? Put a one in the chat if this is making sense so far. Got a few more we'll cover. Okay, and then we'll put this framework together, and then we'll jump into some Q&A. All right. So now, when we have obviously explanation of no direction, so obviously in order to turn it into a date, we need to have direction. Next steps. Okay, in order to turn it into a date, let's be intentional with our time and responses. Okay, let's not do too much, but let's also not be lazy with our responses. Okay, let's actually plan in our day to respond to a message, to reach back out, to have conversation. Okay, matches can turn into dates when we are paying attention to a healthy beginning with an opener. It's engaging, it's fun, it's light, some it's comical. Okay, and we're also not moving forward with interview questions and conversations. Okay, let's talk to people. These are people, not robots, not somebody that's applying for a job, a company. Okay, let's build on this. And as we continue to connect, learn how we have fun and interact, there is a time and space where we can dive into further conversations. Okay. Now, another reason why matches don't turn into dates is because sexual escalation happens too fast. And I'm just going to say this right now that anytime somebody is introducing themselves and it's in a format of sexual, like, references or sexual engagement, it's a great chance this person is moving off of lust. Now, what does that mean in terms of sexual engagement off rip? Yeah, I mean, they're making really weird sexual jokes, perhaps, which can easily be off putting, especially from a guy to a girl. Very off putting. Women do it too. Okay. I'm telling you right now, as somebody who's healed and being intentional with my time and my energy, like if that were sent to me, I'm there's a great chance I'm not engaging. Because like I already can tell the type of energy you're moving by. And that's not how I would move. That's not an alignment with where I'm at. So I'm like, I'm not making room for that. That's a clear no. That's a clear no. Okay. We do not need to be talking about what is happening in between some sheets as the first introduction to conversation or the first few conversations that we have. Why? Why? It clearly exposes motives. It clearly exposes approaches. It clearly exposes heart postures behind why people are where they are and what they're doing. So it happens too early. Like it's literally a turnoff. It's off putting. Matter of fact, a lot of you probably would learn a lot more about who you're dealing with if you didn't include some type of sexual escalations and conversations earlier than you do. Because a great question to ask yourself when you're dating someone and perhaps you have already engaged sexually with them, you should probably ask, what is it without it? What is this without it? And don't talk about potential, talk about what is. What is this without it? For a lot of you, I'll be honest, I'll tell you who they are. Smash and dash, hit and quit, pump and dump, as Dr. Zeb would say. That clip was so funny to me. But that's where a lot of y'all are at with people. This is not somebody that you're actually trying to take to next levels. Without the sexual intimacy, y'all have no connection, no conversation. Forget chemistry and sexual compatibility that y'all love to brag about. Y'all have literally no substance. That's a reason why most of the time you're with somebody, sex takes up majority of the time that y'all together. Because you have no substance. You can't even sit down and have a conversation. And the sexual engagement is what takes up all the time. It's what takes up all the space. It's what numbs you. It's what keeps you from being connected. It's what keeps you from being present. The very thing that you're running to avoid feeling and being in the present is actually the very thing that's actually disrupting the best experience you could have. But you can't see that. Because without all of that, they're just, it's a pump and pay. Well, congratulations. You played yourself. Okay. So, for those of you who might be on the receiving end of these sexual escalations really early, I think we should just call it what it is. Clearly, you're not moving with the level of intentionality that I would expect and that I want around me to move forward into something seriously. And if you're someone who's progressing with sexual escalation fast in conversations, well, there's no wonder. Like, you should not be surprised it doesn't turn into a date. Matter of fact, here's the other thing to that. You shouldn't be surprised if all it was a one night stand. You shouldn't be surprised that all it was y'all got together for a night, y'all had a date, it was one date, they hit and quit, and they ghosted you. You shouldn't be surprised. You shouldn't be surprised because that's how you presented yourself to them. And guess what? How you present a thing, how you got a thing is oftentimes how you have to keep a thing. How you gain somebody's attention is oftentimes the very thing you're going to have to keep doing to keep their attention. So, guess what? If you use your body, your money, your status as a leeway to get somebody to be with you, it only is that's the very thing you're going to have to keep up with in order to keep them. So, God forbid a change happens in your life. Life just gets to life, and money ain't the same. Body goes through some changes. God forbid you are human and some changes and transitions happen. Now, all of a sudden, you're just of no good because the very thing you use to get them is now falling apart, and now you can't keep them. So we have to be mindful of how we're engaging with these things healthily so that way we can make the most out of not just every match, but every conversation, every beginning, every opening, so that it can healthily progress into something more. But it can't healthily progress into something more when what we use to get them were surfaced conversations, surfaced appearances, surfaced experiences. Let's get into some alignment and agreement on some things. Okay. I hope this is making sense so far. We're going to fly through these last three. The first one is fear of initiating. Okay. You like them, it's a match, but everyone's quiet. And this goes for the ladies too. We had a conversation briefly in some of this in previous sections of this installment. Ladies, if you like what you see, I'm encouraging you to take a step to go get it. And that doesn't mean you became the man and you became in your masculine to pursue the man. You didn't do that. I don't know where we got off on this train track that you are now stepping into your masculine energy because letters that formed words created sentences and you hit a blue or green button to send a message. to break the ice, when we really put it into those layman's terms, fam, some of y'all just, man, y'all are missing it. Y'all are missing it. And that's not just to the ladies. Fellas, what greater way to show and express a form of leadership than to break the ice and start the conversation? What greater way to engage than to start the conversation? Because a lot of us, you're more afraid of the rejection. You're more afraid of saying the wrong thing. You're more afraid that it isn't perfect. You're more afraid of all the things that honestly people oftentimes aren't even thinking about when it comes to engaging with you and having conversation with you. That's a lot of you doing that. A lot of the stories you're running with, a lot of the things you're creating, and that isn't even what's happening in real time. And yet the story you're believing is literally playing a role in you missing out on somebody that could make sense for you, but all because we're afraid to break the ice, send a message, start the conversation. If you're nervous and scared, do it anyway. I've always painted this picture as like a lot of the dating scenes today is women on one side, men on the other, and there's a line drawn in the sand. And everybody is looking across the aisle, looking at each other, talking about who they like and who looks good and all these things, but no one is willing to cross the line first to engage, to initiate, to contact. One of the things I've been seeing a lot recently on my social media page, I don't know if I'll ever really truly address it fully. Maybe I will. I guess this can be a good introduction. Is a lot of people in the church who are doing this. A lot of women in church are struggling right now. And there's a huge conversation running around about feminine men. Now, I'm not going to get into all that because I think that what they're describing is kind of off. But I do understand that there is a huge epidemic where you'll be sitting next to somebody and y'all have all the pleasantries and all the beautiful things to say about them when you're not around them, but when you're in their presence, there's nothing said. That's a problem. If you have all the beautiful things to say about this person when you're not in front of them, but when you're in front of them, you are as quiet as a church mouse, we have an issue. You can't be more confident, and this is what this generation has done though. Let's just be honest. Like this is the generation that has grown real strong behind screens, but when we're in person face to face, you have little to nothing to say. That is a problem. That can sometimes be an identity issue, fear of rejection issue, but some of y'all are letting some of these things cripple y'all, and it's nasty work. And oftentimes the fear of initiating is coming from a story you're telling yourself that doesn't even match the reality of what you're experiencing. And so what you have to be willing to do is engage with who's in front of you, and you have to be willing to overcome these stories not by waiting until your feelings calm down, not by waiting until you feel this sense of peace, not until, no, no, no. We just need to do it. Sometimes you like the only way to overcome a lot of what you've wired your brain and nervous system to operate in is simply by engaging, because that's literally reversing a neural pathway you've created regarding a belief about yourself when it comes to engaging with women, engaging with men, engaging with relationships, being the first to initiate, being the first to have the conversation. At some point, you're going to have to interrupt the neural pathway by doing the hard thing. It can't just be you continuously studying on it. It can't just be you continuously hearing podcasts and clips and views. It can't just be you hearing the motivational speeches and needing the playlist and the sound and the music to match the moment so you feel encouraged to step on in. No, fam, at some point, you're just going to have to go. At some point, you're going to have to just do it, because there's been a neural pathway created in your brain, literally, that is reinforced every time you're in front of something you want and you tell yourself, I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid of the consequence. I'm afraid of the response. I'm afraid of how it will be seen. I'm afraid of being a creep. I'm afraid of being a part of the Me Too movement. Fam, like they don't even know you. But that's the story you tell yourself because you're afraid of being rejected. Not because you actually have a chance of being a part of that movement. It's because you are afraid of being rejected. And you're hiding behind that and hiding behind spiritual language, hiding behind screens, hiding behind all these things because you don't want to engage. But how else are you going to put yourself in position to actually do it in a healthy way if we're living in fear? So anything that we're operating in fear, and we've said this before, anything that you're operating in fear of, okay, is something that we should remain curious about, not something we should just stand on the sidelines through and allow to control our every move and behavior. At some point, we have to be curious about it. This has to be one of the that this is it's so backwards because this just generation is described to be one of the more loneliest, most depressed, anxious filled generations. And yet when an opportunity to engage, to have relationships, connections, conversation, our first response is to go the other way. We this is the only generation that of course I'm familiar with because I live in it. The only generation that I know that will say how much they want a relationship, they're ready for a relationship, and they're ready to be taken, only to be in position and opportunity to get what they want and still say no silently and go the other way. The only people, the only generation that I'm aware of that will convince themselves how much they want a relationship and how much their life depends on it, and at the same time experience cognitive dissonance because you don't even believe it's something you can have. How in the world are you going to put yourself in position to get what you say you want and don't even believe it's something you can have? How? This is literally nervous system work that we have to engage in, and we have to be intentional about and patient with ourselves in engaging in. That does come in trial and error. That does come with us experiencing rejection. Y'all, I'm telling you, I've made content on this. You are not going to find the person that you want to do the rest of your life with without experiencing rejection. I'm gonna just keep it a bean boozle with you. 1,000. Keep it a stack, a thou wow, a Billy wow. Like you're not going to be able to find the person that you say you want to do your life with without experiencing some form of rejection along the way. Y'all, the people that have been dating their high school sweethearts, the people that got married to somebody that they've been knowing since middle school is an exception to the rule. We should not treat that as the rule. We should not treat that as the sole deal. For a lot of us, because of when we started dating, because of when we started giving ourselves permission to engage in these things, because we once didn't know, because we weren't taught, or because this is stuff that we're trying to reconfigure in some way, y'all, we're going to go through a process where we got to vet people out. And we got to go through a process where we don't necessarily agree with where people are. We're not ready for it. Or maybe we want it and they don't want us. It's a part of the game. So we have to be able to overcome these fears of rejection. And it starts with the beliefs and stories we've tied to the experiences of rejection that gives us the best steps. And the best story is to reframe rejection as it's either about preference or preparation. Because y'all, sometimes people just don't like you. It's not that they don't have the ability. What's up, Robin? Good to see you, sis. Sometimes people just don't like you. It's not that they don't have the ability. Just like you sometimes don't like the person that has offered their presence and their time to you, that you're too afraid to say no to because you're more afraid of how they'll take it. So you'd rather stay and act like you like them. Like, let's just be honest. You're not a friend. You're not a fan. You don't enjoy it. And that's okay. But we have to grow to be able to trust people's ability to handle hard things because people, humanity, have the ability to handle hard things more than what we give them credit for. And sometimes what we're telling people they don't have the ability to handle is more so us projecting what we actually genuinely deep down don't believe we can handle. And so because we're sometimes more selfish than we are generous, we're more than likely trying to attribute that to somebody else instead of, nah, man, for real, I just don't know if I can handle it. But just because you may not know you can handle it doesn't mean the person in front of you can't handle it. One of the greatest breakthroughs I've experienced in this dating streets and dating space was giving somebody the opportunity to tell me no that I could clearly see was struggling to tell me no. And it wasn't because they did not want it. It wasn't because of some fairy tale of like, oh, they don't want to let go. This was something. No, no, no. Like legitimately, they just didn't know how to say it. And I didn't know how to take hints. I didn't know really how to take the meanings and all those things because I've been there, done that before, and misinterpreted the meaning to something. But man, like I could literally see, oh, you struggle. This is a real struggle. And one of the greatest wins I ever got from that experience wasn't just experiencing rejection to my face, but was actually living out the very things that gave me the substance to be able to look rejection in the eye and be okay with it. A lot of what Christ was doing inwardly in my heart and in my mind in that season that gave me permission to look at that and say thank you. Not because you missing out on something, not because you can't see, not because we're just attributing some sort of dysfunction to this person. No, people have the opportunity and willingness to say no to things just like I do. That's why relationships and romantically are centered on willingness and readiness. Are they willing and are they ready? Do they want you and are they willing to go on the journey? Both are required, right? So, this fear of initiating is something that we have to put ourselves in position to practice overcoming. And it doesn't, and we don't overcome it by staying on the sideline. We don't overcome it by hearing another sermon podcast and hearing another brilliant speaker break down what fear is and break down what the fear of initiating is. It's not going to come by us reading another book. It's not going to come. No, no, no. You've done enough. It's time for us to put ourselves in the position to experience something we want and that what we want not wanting us. It's part of the game, y'all. This is what's exposing the bandwidth that we have for handling hard things. And it's giving ourselves permission to experience the reframing of the rejection that's on the other end. And you never know if it's a rejection. Sometimes we assume it's a rejection on the other end, and it's not. How do we know? How do we know that they're going to say no? Because of all the meanings you're reading into their what? Lack of messaging, body language. Not to say that those things can't be off, not to say that you can't be right on some of those things, but we're more caught up in the stories we're telling ourselves than the facts that are presented in front of us. Looking at something for what it is, not for what it could be. Okay. So the fear of initiating is definitely what turns matches, not what doesn't turn matches into dates. So if you really want to be able to allow that next step to happen, somebody's got to initiate. Be willing to put yourself out there and let somebody look at your message and decline it. Look at your message, not respond. Look at your message, unmatch. Look at your message and respond because we don't know if they're going to do all those things until we do it. And guess what? On either side, you're winning. If they respond, great. If they don't, great. You're winning. A lot of this is a muscle building to the rejections that we're so afraid of experiencing. But your relationship to rejection, your relationship to saying no, your relationship to experiencing someone else's no is only something that is designed to make you better, not bitter. But how does it make you better, not bitter, is through the meaning you attribute behind the rejection. That's the difference maker. I have yet to meet anybody who is married around me for a long period of time, long term marriages. I'm talking 30 plus years, and did not have their fair share of rejections, whether they were rejecting or were the one rejected. Now, that's not to say that that can't happen for you, but I think we should get rid of this idea that it's supposed to happen on the first try with the first person we see, with the first experience that we have. We need to keep our hearts open. Okay. So don't be afraid of initiate because you could very well miss out on the date that you could create. Okay. Last two, waiting for the other person to carry the whole conversation. Y'all, you got to be able to go back and forth with people. You got to be able to be creative. And don't tell me you're not good at conversating. Don't tell me you're not good at having conversations with people. Don't tell me you're not good at asking questions. Those are the stories that you quickly lean to, not because you can't. Okay. Because I promise you, when they start talking about Love Island, you're all in. I promise you, when they start talking about your career and what you love doing, you're all in. So we can be honest. It's not that you struggle with conversation. Oftentimes, it's just you struggle to learn to listen to where other people are without feeling like they need to talk about things that you care about for you to actually have intentional conversation. Because guess what? Newsflash. Not everybody, not everybody sees life through the same lens as you. That's what makes relationships beautiful. You don't struggle to converse. You just struggle to talk about things that you don't necessarily care about because you're still trying to get to learn somebody. But it ain't about you. Oh, it ain't about you. You're getting to know someone new. You're getting to know someone else. So part of that is dying to some selfishness and showing yourself to be friendly. How do I show myself to be friendly? By being curious about what other people or where other people are, where they're at. Okay. What is their story? What are their experiences? What are the things that they've experienced in life that are very different from my own? That's what makes relationships so rich, y'all. If everybody looked at life the same way you did, it would be a boring life. I don't care how spontaneous you are. I don't care how, amazing you are. All those things can be true. But if everybody looked at life the same way you did, woo, boy, it'd be gray, black, and white. So what makes relationships unique is the fact that we all don't have the same experiences, but that doesn't mean I can't connect with you. I can connect with you without you needing to look at things the way I do, without you having the same exact interests as I do. That's what makes us individuals. That's what makes us be able to build something healthy and awesome. Okay. So don't just wait on them to carry the whole conversation. You start it. Shift the conversation, asking a new question. Staying curious. The moment you assume that you know everything about somebody is the moment you start losing leverage on the relationship. It's the moment the relationship actually starts regressing, not progressing. Okay. The moment you begin to believe this person knows everything there is to know about you, that actually is where it starts regressing, not progressing. I'm not telling you to come up with things, but I'm also telling you to stay curious because there's some things that you have yet to experience that you have no idea how you'll respond to. And guess what? The person that you're looking to do life with is going to experience them right next to you. And all those reactions are going to be as authentic as they can be. That might surprise you, make you happy, make you sad, all the things, but it's part of building the relationships in the healthiest ways. Don't wait for the other person to carry the whole conversation. You engage, you start it. Okay. You lead the conversation. You ask the curious question. Okay. You don't have to try too hard. Just be authentic, be in the present, take a look around on the profile, maybe from earlier moments in the conversation that you didn't necessarily address that you want to readdress. Shift the conversation. I know it's not easy for everybody, but it's a muscle that we can build and it tests what we're paying attention to. Okay. Then finally, all right, it's just addressing the aspect of people wanting connection but not knowing how to build. This is probably one of the biggest reasons why matches don't turn into dates out of all of them. You want connection, but you don't want to build it. You want a relationship, but you don't want to build it. I don't know if y'all realize it, but there's not a soul that you're going to come across that has exactly everything that you've wanted on your list. There's something that you're going to sacrifice that, guess what, is not an indication that this person isn't a good fit. It could be an indication that there's a reason why you are there with them. It's because you have what it takes to put that in them, to feel that in them, to play a role in helping them develop that very thing that you want them to have. Now we get to choose that. We get to choose that. Okay. I had a great conversation with a client one time, and I was talking about the 80-20 principle. Sometimes a lot of people leave the 80 to find the missing 20, forgetting that that missing 20 is something they're actually there to help develop. Now, the question becomes, what is that missing 20 for you that you're willing to say, I want to develop with someone? I know we're all at different places in our lives, and there's things that you have now that you need more of with the person you're connecting with compared to previously. But that doesn't mean that you're never in a position to not build with somebody. I can't stand the conversation of the table conversation. What do you bring to the because that y'all have that so backwards, it's disgusting. At some point, you're going to play a role in building something, a culture, a foundation, a family, something with this person, regardless of how much you come with and how much they come with. You're going to play a role in building that up.
So if we're going to play a role in building at any stage of the relationship, regardless of how far we are or how behind we feel we are, I get to choose what I want to invest and build with. Now, my encouragement to you is that when there's mental, emotional, and spiritual alignment, you can build physically and financially. You can build physically and financially. Now, I'm not telling you that you got to get with a duck. I'm not telling you got to get with somebody that just, you don't like looking at. Obviously, attraction is a big part of the deal. Y'all have heard me say that numerous of times. Okay. But we do have to play a role in building the relationship to some extent. And too many times, especially when it comes to the conditioning of relationships and marriages. I had a great conversation with my mentor the other day, and he reminded me of something that was so rich and profound. How there's a lot, okay, and this goes both ways. Well, let's start here for women, okay, specifically for women. There are a lot of you who will come into relationships, connections, and give something a try through the lens of how you've been conditioned to view men. And guess what? That conditioning is now being forced upon the person you're across from, and it doesn't even fit him. And you could very well be missing out on a blessing of an individual for your life because you're forcing this person across from you to fit a mold that they aren't even called to, because it's a reflection of what you were conditioned to see men through. You were raised by a single mom. You were raised by an abundance of women who, again, meant well, were loving, caring, but at the same time didn't have positive relationships with men. So now the Miss Independent conversation, you can do bad all by yourself. Moms who constantly was out to prove that she didn't need no man and neither do you. You were supported by aunties and all these different people, sisters and cousins who were friends, who were single, miserable, and were telling you to lock in to get your degrees, get your money, because all that come first. The men will always be there while they still single and sobbing, and you ride along with them. So the conditioning is very important. Now, this isn't to say that, again, it's part of conversation because we're talking about matches not turning into dates. I'm not telling you to go into the conversation and start asking off rip. Hey, I just want to know how you view men. How did you grow up viewing men? How did you view your father? How did you view your uncles? How did you view people that were father or male figures in your life? Y'all, that's kind of too deep for introduction conversation purposes. Let that be a conversation that molds itself later down the line. I'm not telling you to wait for a year. I'm not telling you to wait 6 months. But let some dates and some conversations happen where you guys are able to connect and have fun. We miss the purposes of dating sometimes because we're so caught up in trying to figure out, is this my wife? Is this my husband? Is this? And we miss being present. And part of being present is being able to have fun with the people that you're connecting with, not to the extent of you throwing your body out there and all the things, but engaging with the process. Have fun, man. We're not gonna take it too seriously. It doesn't have to be something that is so off rip, so serious, so soon. Of course, we're gonna get into those conversations. Okay. And sometimes for some of you, based on the capacity you have and the person that you're connecting to and what they have, those conversations can open up pretty soon. So it's all a measurement of capacity. There are some people who are able to have serious conversations a lot sooner because of the room and depth emotionally that they have. And that's a beautiful thing. And for others, they're not there yet. So we got to take a little bit of more time. It's all a measurement about where you are and being honest about that. Okay. But I'm just noticing in these dating spaces that a lot of people want connection, but you just don't know how to build it. And because you don't know how to build it, we would much rather lean more on matches than we do the process of taking that match into reality to give it a full try and to see what it is. Same for men. Men, condition how do you see women, right? Just like we would ask the women, how do they view men based on how they grew up? Fellas, how do you view women based on how you grew up? You don't have to necessarily tell her up front, because it's not a beginning conversation. But if you don't know, do some inner reflection and think through that. Because a lot of the wounds that you carry towards women, not to say it's always geared towards your mom, it's always geared towards mothers or people or women in your life, but maybe there's a root to that. Your first heartbreak, your first breakup, stories and meanings you attributed to that then all of a sudden started kicking up all these different experiences, meanings, negativity around women, around people. Okay. Part of building these healthy relationships is being aware of those things, not so that we can just see it and see it wreck our lives, but so that now, because we're aware of it, we now have a responsibility to do something about it. Okay. So if we want connection, we got to also go on the process of building it. I'm not telling you to know everything. This conversation was never designed to give you all the blueprint. Okay. Some of it we're still going to learn and we're going to experience. We're going to bump our heads. We're going to figure it out. We're going to win some. We're going to lose some. But I just want you to not live in fear of the beginning processes to building and cultivating connections. It's all part of the game, y'all. It's all part of the game. We're not here to develop an entire relationship off of one message, off of one conversation, off of one message thread. Okay. We're just here listening to the conversation, building and connecting, and seeing what makes sense moving forward. Staying aware, staying in the present, staying available. And you got to play a role in the engagement processes of it. Okay. You got to. You got to be willing to try something. Being honest, being authentic, and being present. Okay. So let me know if that makes sense. Put a one in the chat if that makes sense. Okay. We just wrapped that up. Now I'm going to give you this quick framework. Okay. And then we're gone. I'll take some questions. I got like 15 minutes. We're going to rapid speed this, and I got 15 minutes before I get into this call. Put a one in the chat if this made sense. Was this helpful? Okay. All right. So let's look into this. Okay. So this is kind of a framework that can be helpful when it comes to messaging, when it comes to matching, and when it comes to engaging in those relationships online. All right. I want to give you this quick framework. Okay. And this can be a nice rhythm. Okay. This isn't the only thing. All right. But this can be something for those of you who are new, starting this out, and you want to build on it. Okay. Number one is we want to open light. All right. Write it in the chat, write it down. Number one, we want to open light. This is the opener. Okay. How do we open light? Okay. Think of something comical. Think of something funny. Okay. Think of something that's a little bit corny. Listen, y'all, I know corny is thrown around as a negative derogatory, but I promise y'all, man, all of us are a little corny in some ways. All right. Be okay with that. Be okay with that. Okay. Open light. It's a compliment. Okay. It's a joke. It's a reference to a movie. It's a reference to a song. Okay. A lot of times for me, I'm really, really quick to use song lyrics or a reference. I'm building off the conversation. For example, maybe it's like you should leave a comment if you enjoy leg day. Okay, let me give you an example. So like I come across a profile, she'll say you should leave a comment if you lift weights or you work out or you're really active or something along those lines. And so because I recognize that a lot of women value leg day more than arm day, all right, on average, okay, ain't nothing wrong with it. We'll build off that. It's like, okay, and so then it's like raising a question. It's funny, it's a little witty, okay? Oh, okay, so by weightlifting, you mean getting crushed by a leg day or actually having fun and we can actually, talk about it afterwards? Okay, nothing too hard, nothing too crazy. It's a question, it's engaging, okay? Kind of assumes a level of fitness. She can play with it, she can go with it. Okay, if it's something that she's interested in, she likes what she sees, she wants to respond, boom. Okay? Maybe it's a maybe there's a profile that's discussing, okay, she really likes R&B music. I can tell a theme in her profile, some of the things that she cares about. She cares about Jesus. She cares about worship and R&B music. She cares about sports. She cares about, so I have a lot that I can play with, right? I have a lot that I can use. Maybe I comment on a photo, right? And maybe I suggest a song. Okay, I actually have done this before. Comment on a photo, and then I'll be like, insert, whatever her name is. Okay, for example, her name is Susan. Susan, play, or maybe you can play a little deeper, like Alexa, play "Party in the USA" by Miley Cyrus, or Alexa, play, I don't know, Jaded by Drake. I don't know, something. Right? An R&B song, an R&B classic. Okay? Something that she could easily get is to test the field. Okay, let's see how much of an R&B fan you are, right? And then maybe leave a comment. Alexa, play, insert the R&B song. This is a perfect song for this kind of photo and all the beauty that is entrapped in it. Okay? We don't want to go too far. We don't want to go like, just something light. Okay? Gives her something to look into. Maybe she already knows how the song goes. Starts bopping her head while she's looking at the message. Like, "Oh, you're right." Right? All the things. It's just opening light. Okay? Ladies, you can do the same thing. All right? You see a profile you like, you leave a message. Open light. Take the context clues from what you see on the profile. You don't feel like you have to come up with something out of thin air, but use something that you see on the profile. That's why I'm saying the profiles that you engage with and that you like, make sure that there's some prompts, something that you can answer with. Okay. That makes it easiest. All right. Shout out to Rosalie who says, how to keep it just fun if men get offended when you don't give in to their expectations. And okay, so being the fun girl is interpreted the wrong way. So I want you to share more about your not necessarily experience with that, but I want you to share maybe more so what you mean with that. All right, keeping it fun for me is keeping them as friends since there is no pressure until further notice. Okay. And whereas what? They're but they're mad at that. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. See, I love this. Okay. So I think one, that just means that the person that is messaging you in that capacity, who finds that offensive or wrong or is frustrated at that, we're just knowing that they're not at your speed, and that's okay. This is all a part of the conversation for us to date on our level, right? We got to date on our level. And so if our level, which makes complete sense, it doesn't mean it's a wrong level. It doesn't mean it's a bad level. But if we're just being honest about the level we're at, we're saying, hey, like I want to take things slow. So I'm more of a, hey, let's start out as friends and let's see where it goes from there. Then that means the person that we're connecting with, who we deem as somebody that's a legitimate candidate, is gonna be okay with that. And so if you're running into men who are upset at that, then that just means that we don't even need to be engaging with it, you know? And yes, that does mean that we have a smaller pool of people to choose from, but y'all, I would rather have a smaller pool of people to choose from than have everybody to choose from and terrible candidates fill in the pool. I would rather have less options that are more quality than a whole lot of options that have zero quality, no substance, no process, no patience, no willingness to build and grow. And so, yeah, keeping it fun can most certainly mean, hey, let's start out as friends. Let's do that. Let's take our time. Okay. If I say that and they date other people and don't take you seriously, then they're not for me. And if I say that and they date other people and don't take you seriously, yeah, I mean, yeah. So, but at the same time, right? So we have to also recognize too, though, Rosalie, right? So if we're saying, hey, I want to start out as friends and I want to build something there, we can't also then say, I think I'm understanding you correctly, so I don't want to misinterpret it. But we can't. If you're saying I want to start out as friends, but then I also want this to be somewhat exclusive, as if like, okay, now we're actually trying to put this to the test to see if it's something that we can build. We can't put that limitation on them to be like, okay, so then you dating other people, matching with other people, conversing with other people is now like, oh yeah, no, that's not okay with me. I think if we're gonna say, hey, I want to start out as friends, then friendship is what it is. This also leaves the door for him or for someone else, right, to continue engaging in other relationships. We have to be okay with that. Then it's not a real friendship. I don't think we're saying the same thing. I think we have different interpretations of what friendship is. This is part of why we should get curious on this and identify what is a friendship to you. Because when I hear friendship, I hear, oh yeah, we're cordial, you know, we're friends. This is not something that you're not my girl, I'm not your man. So there's no expectations centering that. And so if there's no expectations centering that, then I'm still free to be able to date. So if we're going to say friendship, then we have to legitimately treat it as a friendship. We don't treat friends as lovers. We don't treat friends as if they're husbands and wives, girlfriends, boyfriends. And what it sounds like is there's a level of exclusivity, keeping it friendly to get to know each other without pressure until it becomes right. So in the process, so I get you. So that's fair. Okay. That's mutual. Right. So keeping it friendly to get to know each other without pressure until it becomes romantic. So what I'm saying to you is that that still gives him room and should, just like it should give you room to still explore other options because it's friendly. There's no pressure, which means that we can't also move with this idea of, so there's an expectation of getting it to romance because we don't know. We're just friends. And we should engage in this in a friendly manner. And I think that is something that you should converse with when you're matching with somebody, and that's an expectation. Because if that's an expectation in your mind and that goes uncommunicated, you're mad for all the wrong reasons. And we have to be honest about that. Cuz I don't think it's fair to either of you if you're saying, "Hey, we should agree to be friends and just get to know each other as friends." And we're like, "Oh yeah, cool." But then get mad when he's dating somebody, he's going out on dates and he's engaging with somebody who possibly is ready for more, right? I'm ready for more. So, like, that's why I'm saying the honesty and capacity is massive in these conversations. Massive in these conversations. If we open light with friendship, keep it friendship. I think a part of me does this as a defense mechanism. But that's okay, Rosalie. So I do want to say this, like that to start with friendship, um, but then get mad when they don't. I think so. That's something that we want to be honest about, Rosalie. Right? So I do this as a defense mechanism, but they get mad when they, but then get mad when they don't commit. That is a thing that we have to be honest about. 1,000%. Shout out to Sean in the building, man. I caught you and Demetrius last live, man, the other night. Awesome stuff. Please go check out Love After Divorce. My guy Sean, man, is doing amazing stuff. I actually had the privilege of being able to be a part of his podcast. You guys, please go check out his work. Amazing, amazing stuff. Yeah, so we have to be honest about that, Rosalie. We cannot sit here and get mad at someone who doesn't commit when we set the bar and said friendship only. Right? That can't happen. And so if that's what we're going to do cuz that's where we're at, that's okay. And I don't think it's something that is wrong. Just know what that comes with. Know that that comes with you being at your pace. Know that that comes with you being where you are. And most of the time women often do offer friendship at first because they want to know, is this safe? Because that's their way of filtering out this connection through the lens of safety psychologically. I think that's a beautiful thing. But we can't get mad if they don't commit because we did not introduce this conversation in the lens of let's commit. We introduced this in the form of friendship, and friendship is not the same as lovers. It's not the same as commitment. It's not the, and so we just have to be honest about that. That's part of the game. I hope that made sense. Um, and then the question Leah Matt asked, it says, what is your opinion on long distance online relationships? I think you have to know your capacity. I think online relationships can work. Long distance can work. I do think it takes a little bit more intentionality, a little bit more focus, a little bit more creativity. Okay, in terms of like spending time together. How often you guys seeing each other? How long of a distance is this? Right, and is it feasible? To the extent of you being able to go where he's at, he's coming to where you are. What do those plans look like? How does communicating look like? The measurement of the relationship is a little bit different because oftentimes, you might be able to measure the relationship in person a lot differently, especially if you're in close proximity. And sometimes with long distance, you might find yourself like, oh, they took a little longer to respond. And so I'm feeling like that's a hit at the relationship or the stability of it. And so there has to be clear identifying labels to how do you both expect this long distance relationship to work? What are the ground rules? What are the expectations? This is where both of you come together to create that instead of going into it through with your lens and expectations and not communicate that. He's coming in with his, and then there's no communication. Communication makes a massive difference in long distance relationships. And so I think it's only based on one's capacity. If you genuinely are like, yeah, I don't know if I have room and space for that, don't get into it. Maybe long distance relationships isn't for you. And we shouldn't move with the aspect of, well, this person is just so perfect. And I don't know if I'll come across somebody else like this, to the point where you're like, if this doesn't work or if we don't go for this, then there's no one else available for me. I think that's a trap. We're talking out of lack, not out of abundance. And so I think they can work. You just have to know your capacity and be honest about that. 1000%. Because it's not for everybody. And that might be where I would put that. Hey, love after, hey, Sean mentioned it. Okay. He said it worked for my wife and me. There it is. It definitely works. It definitely works. There's just different layers and expectations that have to be communicated in order for these things to really work healthily. And it can work. It can work. And I'm not somebody who's against that. Okay. Not somebody who's against that. Just I think if there's more context to it, know where you're at and what you're ready for. Okay. Um, so I want you guys to use this rhythm, open light. Okay. Number two, get specific. These are the last few things I got because I got this call in 2 minutes. Okay. Get specific. All right. Get specific in what it is that maybe you are looking for. Okay. Get specific understanding on what they're looking for. This turns into open conversation. Hey, what brought you to Hinge? What brought you to this app? What are you looking for? What are you paying attention to? Okay. Really, really huge. Number three, create emotional or playful connection. Okay. This is really massive, man. We are human at the end of the day. You do not have to be serious all day, every day, y'all. Become playful. You know, obviously you're learning somebody, so you don't come off the woodworks talking to them like you would to your closest friend. All right. Or your siblings or somebody that you're around every day. But there's got to be some level of, consideration, banter. Okay. We love talking about roasting nowadays. All right. Obviously, you want to be mindful of that. There's still somebody new. You don't know them. So don't go too crazy. All right. But there's got to be some level of emotional or playful connection. Okay. You're joking. All right. You're making a slight joke. Laugh at yourself. That's one of the best ways to do it. Okay. Introduce something that you make a joke of comparing to what they mentioned. All right. There's some people that, you know, might say on their profile that they're looking for somebody with a mustache, right? Mustaches I'm weirdly attracted to, right? You might see some of that on some profiles. And so for me, I might make a joke out of that in response and say, okay, well, I got that, but do you mind a little bit of a goatee action? I know it's not necessarily all connecting, but I'm trying my best. That's a funny thing, a funny way to engage. You're lighthearted. That lets them know I'm not taking life too seriously. He can laugh at himself. Okay. So he's not going to get too offended too fast. There's a lot of different ways that we can move about this that's really, really helpful, but you want to be playful. Okay. Don't be too serious all the time. I know you love Jesus. I know you're looking for your husband. I know you're looking for your wife. I know that you care about emotional intelligence and all the things, but be playful. Okay. There's a side to you that you want them to get to know, just like they want to get to know of you and themselves. Okay. Then you want to clarify intentions. That's the fourth one, right? What are your intentions? What are you looking for? If you don't know them, take time to know them before you start engaging in dating. Know what you're looking for, know where you're after, know where you're going. Okay. It doesn't mean it has to pan out exactly like this, but we need to know our intentions. Okay. Don't ask them abundance of questions of clarifying intentions with you, and yet you can't respond with what your intentions are with them. Okay. Very, very important. And then finally, okay, as that conversation is building, okay, I know I've had a lot of conversations with emotional, connections, intelligence, curiosities, listening to different stories of people's experiences based on what they shared on their app, how they led to one thing after another. So now we want to be able to get this out of the app. Like I said before, the quicker it gets out of the app, the more it has an opportunity to grow into something. So move toward a call, a FaceTime. Okay. Take your time with it. Okay. Don't try to jump immediately there, but as you're having conversation, you're liking the conversation, the flow of conversation in the app. Now it's like, hey, I would love to have a FaceTime call with you. Here's my number. Okay, let's set up a time to do a FaceTime date. Okay, send me a message and we'll share more details there. Beautiful. Okay. If you're like, hey, I would, maybe it's not a FaceTime, but you're like, yo, I would love to get on a call. Same thing. Okay. If you're like, hey, I would love to take this to a date. All right. If you're somebody who's like, yeah, I want to connect from a date through the app, I haven't really met many people like that. But if you are like that, okay. So, hey, I know this place right around here, this, and this. Let's meet here. Okay. But I would highly suggest before going on a date in person, do a FaceTime. FaceTime gives you the opportunity to obviously be on screen with one another, pay attention to body language. I get to see you and hear you. Okay. We're building conversation there. And then let that be the introduction space that then leads to, okay, I want to actually go on another date or an actual first in person date. I like what I saw. I like what I heard. You're not a catfish. You're not fake. But I also enjoyed having conversation with you too. And that is what built to more later. Okay. And we're taking our time, taking our time. The FaceTime doesn't have to mean that we're now getting married, just like the first date doesn't have to mean that we're now getting married, just like them having your number doesn't have to mean that we're now getting married. What this is suggesting is that this is all checkpoints and beginning stages and different checkpoints that is creating direction. And as long as we have direction, okay, we have a way out and we have a way of creating something fruitful. But if a conversation has no direction, it usually dies within the app. Okay. If there is no direction, there's no next steps, there's no direction in conversation, the conversation doesn't build, it typically is going to die within the app. Okay. And know that you have the responsibility to control what you can control. You cannot control what other people can do, what they do, how they respond, the time they respond. Just know that all these things are indications of whether or not, okay, is this something that's legit, something to work with, to move forward with, or maybe I'll just keep looking around and being okay with whether or not they respond or whenever they respond, and if it's something to continue to engage with or not. And that gives you the freedom to move forward there. Was this helpful? I hope it was. Put a one in the chat if this was helpful. Okay. I really, really appreciate you guys a ton for sticking with me on this live. For those of you who were here the whole time, greatly appreciate you. You are amazing. All right. To those of you who are watching this replay, you're awesome as well. Hope this was helpful. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Appreciate you guys a ton. I do have to split for this call. Last question. Ali asked if some things can come across as controlling. How do you determine? That's a great question. That's a really great question. Just because I'm low on time, I'm probably not going to dive into that. But send me a message. We'll talk about it there. And I'll follow up with you there, Ali, if that is completely okay. Just send me the same question. If some things come across as controlling, how do you determine? Because I probably would first want to know what is it that we're assuming is controlling. Okay, what are we attributing as controlling, and how do we navigate that? Okay, so be sure to follow up there. I appreciate you guys, all you guys, for tuning in. Listen, if you guys are looking for some free resources to building secure relationships so you can date healthily, date securely, and all the things, be sure to check out the top of my page. There you'll have a free relational diagnostic. You'll be able to take a free attachment style quiz to know your attachment style if you don't know that. That's really important, especially in these dating streets, to date healthily. Okay, so you know how to heal that moving forward. We talked a lot about attachments. We talked a lot about all those things and the nuances of this conversation. I have a secure program that's designed to help you get to securely attached in a matter of 12 weeks and begin to build that system foundationally within you at a nervous system level, because healing your attachment style is not just tips and tricks. It's about nervous system modalities, putting this into play in real life to see legitimate change mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. Okay. As well as physically and even financially. Okay. So if you're interested in that, I have a free week trial that's available today, right now, that I want you to be a part of to start getting wins along with others in the community. So be sure to send me a message in the DMs with the word secure, and I would love to get you started on that, as well as other options, programs, sessions, all the things available here in the coaching space and programs that are available for you to get the healing you need, to do relationships healthily, to date healthily, and more importantly, so you can find the right love you've been looking for without abandoning yourself ever again to do it. Okay. If you can't do any of that, be sure to follow for more. Subscribe over on YouTube, follow on Instagram, follow on TikTok as we continue to navigate relationships, doing them in a healthy way while building security that lasts beyond marriage. All right. I appreciate you guys a ton. And as always, until our next conversation, be easy and be breezy. Peace. Hey, appreciate y'all, YouTube. Take it easy.